The glass doors of the Mirai Tower slid open, and Lee Seo-yoon sprinted across the marble lobby, her heels clicking like gunfire against the floor. She was 5 minutes late for the most important pitch of her life. In her right hand, she gripped a steaming cup of dark coffee. In her left, a slim leather folder containing the restructuring plans that could save her father's legacy. She saw the executive elevator doors starting to close. Without thinking, she lunged forward, thrusting her hand between the sensors. The doors shuddered and groaned back open. Seo-yoon stumbled inside. Her momentum threw her right into a solid, towering chest. Splash! The plastic lid popped. A wave of scalding black coffee erupted from the cup, painting a jagged, ugly streak across a pristine, slate-gray silk tie and a crisp white shirt. "Damn it!" a voice hissed. It wasn't a shout. It was a low, lethal growl that made the hair on the back of Seo-yoon's neck stand up. She gasped, dropping the empty cup. She looked up and her breath hitched. Standing before her was a man who looked like he had been sculpted from ice. Sharp jawline, eyes like cold obsidian, and a mouth currently twisted in a snarl of pure disgust. This was Kang Jin-Hyuk, the man the media called the Soul Reaper. He looked down at his ruined suit, then back at her. "Are you blind? Or just remarkably stupid?" Seo-yoon's face burned. She had spent all night prepping for this, and now, within 10 seconds, she was being insulted by a stranger who smelled like expensive sandalwood and arrogance. Her shock quickly turned to a spark of heat. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice tight, "but you were the one standing right in front of the door. And stupid is a bit much for an accident, don't you think?" Jin-Hyuk stepped toward her, invading her personal space until she was backed against the mirrored wall of the elevator. He was a head taller than her, and the sheer weight of his presence was suffocating. An accident. He plucked the ruined tie from his neck with 2 fingers, as if it were a dead snake. "This suit costs more than your annual salary, you pathetic brat. You've wasted my time, and you've wasted my clothes. Get out." Seo-yoon's jaw tightened. She didn't know he was the CEO yet. She just knew he was the most hateful man she'd ever met. "The elevator is moving, in case you haven't noticed. And I have a meeting on the 44th floor that I am not missing because of your temper tantrum." "You have a meeting?" Jin-Hyuk let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Not anymore. I'm the one you're meeting. And you're fired." Seo-yoon froze. The blood drained from her face. This was the new CEO. This was the man who held her career in his hands. Oh God. I just told the king of Mira he was having a temper tantrum. Before she could swallow her pride and apologize, the elevator gave a violent, sickening jolt. Crunch. The lights flickered and died. The hum of the motor vanished, replaced by an eerie, heavy silence. "What happened?" Seo-yoon whispered, her bravado vanishing in the dark. Jin-Hyuk didn't answer. He reached for the control panel, punching the buttons. Nothing. He hit the emergency alarm. Silence. "The cable brake engaged," he said, his voice eerily calm despite the situation. "We're stuck." Minutes passed. The emergency red light kicked in, casting a blood-colored glow over the small space. The air felt like it was thickening. Jin-Hyuk pulled out his phone. "No signal. The shielding in this shaft is too thick." Seo-yoon felt a bead of sweat roll down her spine. She wasn't just stuck in an elevator, she was trapped in a 4x4 box with a man who wanted her head on a platter. "Think, Seo-yoon. Think." "There's an override switch, she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's behind the maintenance panel at the very top of the ceiling. If we can flip it, the manual brakes might release enough for us to slide to the nearest floor." Jin-Hyuk looked at the ceiling, then back at her. He looked at her slim frame and her 5-inch heels. "It's 7 feet up. You can't reach it." "Then you reach it," she snapped. "The panel requires a code and a physical turn," he said, checking the digital interface. "I can see the panel, but I need someone with smaller hands to reach into the wiring. My hands won't fit through the gap." He looked at her. His eyes traveled from her face down to her waist, then back up. The air between them suddenly felt electric, but not with anger. It was the raw, primal tension of 2 people forced into a hunt. "I have to lift you," he said. It wasn't a request. Excuse me? Unless you want to spend the next 6 hours in this box smelling like spilled coffee, you're going to let me lift you up so you can flip that switch. Seo-yoon swallowed hard. Fine. Just don't drop me. Jin-Hyuk stepped closer. He placed his hands on her waist. His palms were hot, even through the fabric of her blouse. Seo-yoon gasped, her hands instinctively landing on his shoulders. His muscles felt like granite beneath his shirt. For a second, they just stood there. His face was inches from hers. She could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. She could feel his steady, rhythmic breath against her lips. He's a monster, she reminded herself, an arrogant, cold-hearted monster. But her body wasn't listening. Her heart was racing for a completely different reason now. On 3, he whispered. His voice had dropped an octave, becoming a velvet rasp that sent a shiver straight to her core. 1, 2, 3. He hoisted her up. Seo-yoon felt a surge of vertigo. She reached for the ceiling panel, her fingers fumbling with the small metal latch. "I've got it!" she cried out. "The switch is—" Suddenly the elevator groaned. A massive jolt sent them both reeling. "Hold on!" Jin-Hyuk shouted. The elevator dropped 6 inches abruptly. The force threw Seo-yoon off balance. She tumbled down screaming, and Jin-Hyuk lunged to catch her. They hit the floor with a heavy thud. Seo-yoon landed flat on her back, her breath knocked out of her. Jin-Hyuk landed directly on top of her, his body wedged between her legs, his arms braced on either side of her head. Their faces were barely an inch apart. Their chests were heaving, rising and falling in sync. Seo-yoon could feel the heat radiating off him, the hard lines of his legs pressed against hers. Jin-Hyuk's eyes weren't cold anymore. They were burning. He looked down at her mouth, his gaze darkening with a hunger that terrified her and thrilled her. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice strained. I think so," she whispered. Neither of them moved. They were frozen in a moment of pure, dangerous attraction. Jin-Hyuk's hand moved slightly, his thumb grazing the line of her jaw. It was a soft, unexpected gesture from a man who had been cursing her moments ago. And then the world ended. Ding! The power snapped back on. The elevator doors hummed and slid wide open. Standing in the lobby of the 44th floor were 30 people, the vice chairman, the board of directors, and Min Jae, Seo-yoon's best friend. Every single one of them had their mouth hanging open. From their perspective, the Ice King's CEO was on the floor, pinning a disheveled, coffee-stained employee between his legs in what looked like a moment of intense passion. Click, click, click. The sound of Min Jae's phone camera was like a death knell. Jin-Hyuk didn't move immediately. He took his time, slowly rising to his feet and smoothing out his ruined shirt. He looked at the board of directors with a face that had returned to absolute zero. "The elevator malfunctioned," he said coolly, as if he hadn't just been staring at Seo-yoon like he wanted to devour her. He didn't offer Seo-yoon a hand up. He didn't even look at her. He just stepped over her and walked toward his office. "Clean this up," he threw back over his shoulder, "and get that woman out of my sight. She's fired." Seo-yoon sat on the cold floor, her heart still thumping, her legs trembling. She looked up and saw Min Jae smiling, a sharp, predatory smile. "I am in so much trouble," Seo-yoon thought. An hour later, Seo-yoon was in the employee restroom scrubbing the coffee out of her blouse with cold water. Her hands were shaking. "He fired me. He actually fired me." But she couldn't leave. If she left now, her father's company would be liquidated by Mirai Group by the end of the month. She had to stay. She had to fight. The door to the restroom swung open. Min Jae walked in, checking her lipstick in the mirror. "Rough first day, Seo-yoon?" Jae asked, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I'm fine, Jae. It was just an accident." "An accident? You were practically wrapping your legs around the most powerful man in the country. Do you have any idea how that looks?" "I've already sent the photo to the internal gossip group." Seo-yoon whirled around. "You did what?" "Jae, we've been friends for 5 years. Why would you do that?" Jae turned, her eyes cold. "Friends? Seo-yoon, you were always the smart one, the one everyone expected to succeed. But look at you now. You're a coffee-stained mess who's about to be escorted out by security. I'm not leaving, Seo-yoon said, her voice growing steady. Oh, you are? CEO Kang doesn't do mistakes. And you're a huge mistake. Seo-yoon didn't answer. She dried her shirt as best she could, tucked her folder under her arm, and walked out. She didn't go to the exit. She walked straight to the CEO's office. The secretary tried to stop her, but Seo-yoon pushed past. She threw the doors open. Jin-Hyuk was sitting behind a massive obsidian desk, a new suit already on his frame. He didn't look up. I told you to leave. I'm not leaving until you look at these files, Seo-yoon said, slamming the leather folder onto his desk. You want to restructure my father's company? Fine. But if you do it your way, you'll lose 400 billion won in the first quarter. My way saves you the money and keeps the employees. Jin-Hyuk finally looked up. He leaned back, crossing his arms. You have a lot of nerve coming back in here. I have a lot of brains, she shot back, which is more than I can say for your elevator maintenance crew. A ghost of a smirk played on Jin-Hyuk's lips. It was gone in a flash, replaced by that stony mask. You think you're smart? He asked. I know I am. Fine, Jin-Hyuk said, standing up. He walked around the desk, stopping just inches from her. The sandalwood scent hit her again, making her stomach flip. I'll give you a chance, but not as a consultant. Then what? My personal assistant just quit because she couldn't handle my temperament. You will take her place. You will be at my beck and call 24 hours a day. You will fix my schedules, you will fix my coffee, and you will fix this restructuring plan. Seo-yoon felt a trap closing around her. And if I do? If you succeed, I'll save your father's company. If you fail, I will personally ensure you never work in this country again. He leaned down, his voice a whisper against her ear. And Seo-yoon, if you ever spill coffee on me again, I won't be so accidental about what I do to you next. The next morning, Seo-yoon arrived at the office at 6 a.m., her body aching from the stress of the previous day. She wore a high-collared navy suit, professional, sharp, and armored. She wasn't going to give Jin-Hyuk a single inch of skin to look at today. She walked toward the executive suite, but as she passed the open plan office, she felt the temperature drop. The whispering started instantly. That's her, someone hissed. The elevator girl. Did you see the photo? She looked like she was begging for it. I heard she spilled coffee on purpose just to get his jacket off. Seo-yoon kept her chin up, but her stomach twisted. She saw Min Jia standing by the coffee machine, surrounded by a group of senior managers. Jia didn't hide it. She held up her phone, showing the screen to a director who was laughing. Seo-yoon walked straight up to her. The photo is a lie, Jia. You were there. You know the elevator dropped. Aunt. Jia took a slow sip of her latte, her eyes mocking. I know what I saw, Seo-yoon, and the board knows what it looks like. If I were you, I'd be checking the exits, not the break room. Ga, I'm the CEO's new personal assistant, Seo-yoon said, her voice loud enough for the others to hear, which means if you have time to gossip, you have time to finish the Q3 audit reports I'll be requesting from your department in an hour. The laughter stopped. Ga's face paled for a fraction of a second before twisting into a sneer. PA, you're just a glorified maid. Let's see how long you last before he breaks you. Seo-yoon didn't wait for a reply. She turned and marched into Jin-Hyuk's office. Jin-Hyuk was already there. He didn't look like a man who had been trapped in an elevator 12 hours ago. He looked like a god of industry. He was reviewing a digital blueprint, his fingers moving across a holographic display with surgical precision. You're 4 minutes early, he said without looking up. Incompetent people are usually late. Are you trying to compensate for something? I'm trying to do my job, Seo-yoon replied, setting a fresh, perfectly brewed espresso on his desk. No spills today, CEO Kang. He stopped his work and looked at the cup. Then he looked at her. His gaze was heavy, lingering on her lips for a second too long before snapping back to her eyes. The memory of their bodies pressed together in the dark flashed between them like a live wire. He cleared his throat, his expression turning to stone. Don't get comfortable. We leave for the Incheon construction site in 10 minutes. A rival firm, Taeson Group, is trying to poach our lead architect. If we lose him, the project dies. Taesan, Seo-yoon frowned. They're known for aggressive tactics. They don't just poach, they sabotage. Jin-Hyuk stood up, grabbing his blazer. Which is why you will be silent and observant. You are there to take notes, not to offer your brilliant opinions. The construction site was a skeleton of steel and concrete rising against the gray Incheon sky. The wind was biting, whipping Seo-yoon's hair across her face. The lead architect, Mr. Choi, was a man in his 60s, looking exhausted. Standing next to him was a slick man in a tailored Italian suit, Chai Seong-ho, the vice president of Taesan Group and Jin-Hyuk's direct rival. Jin-Hyuk, Seong-ho called out, his smile too wide to be real. I see you've brought a new assistant. She's much prettier than the last one. Is this the one from the elevator photo, the rising star of the company? Jin-Hyuk's jaw tightened, the muscle in his cheek pulsed. Stay on topic, Seong-ho. Mr. Choi belongs to Mirai. Does he? Seong-ho stepped closer to Seo-yoon, his eyes roaming over her with a predatory grease that made her skin crawl. A woman this talented shouldn't be scrubbing coffee stains for a man who doesn't appreciate her. Mirai is a sinking ship. Come to Taesan and I'll give you your own department. He reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind Seo-yoon's ear. Before his fingers could touch her, Jin-Hyuk moved. He didn't just step in between them. He grabbed Seong-ho's wrist in a grip that looked painful. Don't touch what isn't yours, Jin-Hyuk said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low frequency. What? She's just an employee, isn't she? Seong-ho laughed, though his eyes showed fear. Or is the rumor true? Is the Ice King finally melting for a commoner? She is the lead strategist for the Mirai Flora merger, Jin-Hyuk lied smoothly, his voice echoing with authority. And if you touch her again, I won't just take this contract. I'll buy your father's debt and bury your firm by Monday. He shoved Seong-ho's arm back. We're done here. Mr. Choi, my office, 2 p.m. Back in the sleek black SUV, the silence was suffocating. Jin-Hyuk was staring out the window, his chest rising and falling sharply. You didn't have to do that, Seo-yoon said softly. I can handle men like Seong-ho. Jin-Hyuk turned to her, his eyes blazing. You can handle him? He was seconds away from insulting you to your face in front of my staff. Do you have any idea how that reflects on me? Oh, so it's about you, Seo-yoon snapped, her own temper flaring. Always about your reputation, your suit, your company. Did it ever occur to you that I'm a person, not just a line on your balance sheet? Stop the car, Jin-Hyuk commanded the driver. The car pulled over on a deserted stretch of the coastal road. The driver stepped out, knowing better than to stay. Jin-Hyuk lunged across the leather seat. He didn't hit her. He grabbed the headrest behind her, pinning her against the door. The space was even smaller than the elevator. You think I don't see you as a person? He hissed. Since yesterday, you are the only person I can't stop thinking about. Every time I close my eyes, I feel you under me. Every time I see you, I want to scream at you for what you're doing to my head. Seo-yoon's breath hitched. What I'm doing? You're the one who hired me to torture me. I hired you because I couldn't let you walk out that door and never see you again. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. His scent, that intoxicating sandalwood and rain, filled her senses. I hate how much I want you, Lee Seo-yoon. It's a weakness I can't afford. Then don't want me, she whispered, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Too late, he murmured. His hand came up, cradling the back of her neck. His thumb brushed over the pulse point at her throat, which was thrumming wildly. He looked at her lips with a desperate, angry longing. He didn't kiss her. He did something worse. He pressed his lips against the sensitive skin just below her ear and inhaled deeply. Finish the Flora proposal by midnight, he whispered, his voice vibrating through her entire body. Come to my penthouse, don't make me wait. He pulled back, his face returning to that cold, impenetrable mask. He signaled the driver back into the car. Seo-yoon sat there, her skin tingling where he had touched her, her mind a chaotic blur of fear and desire. He's playing with me, she thought. He's a predator, and I'm just the prey he decided to keep. But as she looked at him, so cold, so powerful, yet so clearly unraveling, she realized she had a power over him that he was terrified of. Midnight. The top floor of the sky-high luxury apartments. So-yoon stood at the door of the penthouse, the Flora Group folder clutched to her chest like a shield. She rang the bell. The door opened. Jin-Hyuk wasn't in a suit. He was wearing black silk lounge pants and a half-button white shirt, his hair damp and messy. He looked human. He looked vulnerable. "Come in," he said, his voice tired. The penthouse was a masterpiece of cold marble and glass overlooking the glittering lights of Seoul. But there were no photos, no personal items. It felt like a museum, not a home. As Seo-yoon walked toward the dining table to spread out her files, she noticed him stumbling slightly. He gripped the edge of a chair, his knuckles white. "CEO Kong?" He didn't answer. He slumped into the chair, his face ghostly pale. A cold sweat was breaking out on his forehead. "Jin-Hyuk!" She dropped the files, rushing to his side. She put her hand on his forehead. He was ice cold. "It's nothing," he gasped, his eyes unfocused. "Just the anniversary. My father." He began to tremble, a violent rhythmic shaking. It was a PTSD-induced panic attack, triggered by the date and the stress of the day. Seo-yoon didn't hesitate. She didn't call for help. She knew he would hate the weakness being exposed. She sat on the floor in front of him, took his large, shaking hands in hers, and pressed them against her cheeks. "Look at me," she commanded, her voice soft but firm. "Jin-Hyuk, look at my eyes. Breathe with me." She began to take slow, deep breaths. For a long time, he just stared at her, his eyes filled with a raw, agonizing pain that broke her heart. Slowly, his breathing began to match hers. The tremor subsided. He leaned forward, resting his head on her shoulder. He was heavy, but she didn't care. She wrapped her arms around him, holding the most powerful man in Seoul, as if he were a broken child. "I was there," he whispered into her neck. "In the collapse. I heard him calling my name and I couldn't reach him. Everything was dark. Just like the elevator." Seo-yoon squeezed him tighter. "You're not in the dark anymore. I've got you." He pulled back just enough to look at her. The cold CEO was gone. In his place was a man who was utterly, completely lost. And in that moment of absolute vulnerability, the line didn't just blur, it snapped. He reached out, his hand trembling as he cupped her face. This time there was no anger, no power play. He leaned in and kissed her. It tasted like coffee, tears, and a decade of loneliness. It was a kiss that changed everything. The morning after the penthouse kiss, the air in the Mirai building felt different, heavier, charged with a secret that felt like a ticking time bomb. Seo-yoon walked into the office with her heart in her throat. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt Jin-Hyuk's lips on hers and the desperate way he had clung to her in his moment of weakness. "He's my boss. He's the man who fired me twice in one day," she reminded herself as she stepped into the executive suite. "This is a professional suicide mission." Jin-Hyuk was already at his desk. The silk lounge pants were gone, replaced by a three-piece charcoal suit that screamed power. He didn't look up when she entered. His face was a mask of cold efficiency, even sharper than before. "The Flora Group documents are on your desk," he said, his voice flat. "I've marked the sections that need revision." But he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was Shin Chae-young, the heiress of Hansel Group. She was elegant, polished, and had her hand possessively tucked into Jin-Hyuk's arm. "CEO Kong," Seo-yoon said, stepping forward with a professional smile that felt like it was cracking her face. "The Flora representatives are waiting in the lounge." "Ah, the assistant," Chae-young said, looking Seo-yoon up and down with a bored expression. "Jin-Hyuk, you didn't tell me your staff was so colorful." He reached out, not for her hand, but for the lapel of her blazer, straightening it with agonizing slowness. "In this room, you are my strategist," he whispered. his eyes dark with a heat that contradicted his cold tone. "But outside of these walls, you belong to me. If anyone asks about last night, you weren't there. Do you understand?" "I'm not a secret to be kept, Jin-Hyuk," she whispered back, her pride stinging. "It's not for me." "It's for you," he hissed, his hand sliding from her blazer to the back of her neck, pulling her slightly closer. "The board is already looking for a reason to crucify you. If they find out I touched you, they won't just fire you. They'll destroy your father's legacy just to spite me." He leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. "Be careful. The walls here have eyes." He pulled away instantly as a knock sounded at the door. Seo Yoon scrambled to her desk, her face flushed as she unlocked the door. It was Min-ji Ah. She walked in with a stack of files, her eyes darting between Jin-Hyuk's stoic face and Seo Yoon's disheveled energy. "CEO Kang, the preliminary audit for the merger is ready," Ji-Ah said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. She turned to Seo Yoon. "Oh, Seo Yooni, you look tired. Did you stay up all night? Working on the proposal?" "I did," Seo Yoon said, focusing on her screen. "Funny," Ji-Ah mused, leaning over Seo Yoon's shoulder. "I called your apartment last night to check on a file, but you didn't answer. And your car wasn't in the parking garage this morning until 5 a.m. Jin-Hyuk didn't blink. "Director Men, if you spent as much time on your audits as you do on the staff's personal schedules, we'd be the top firm in Asia. Leave the files and get out." GA's smile didn't fade, it just sharpened. "Of course, CEO. I just want to make sure our star strategist isn't burning out." The next 3 days were a blur of adrenaline and exhaustion. Seo Yoon and Jin-Hyuk developed a rhythm. In meetings, they argued, she challenged his ruthlessness, he mocked her naivety. To the rest of the company, they were enemies. But in the quiet moments, in the back of the SUV, in the service elevator, in the dim light of the office after 9 p.m., the tension exploded. A stolen kiss behind a file room door, his hand resting on her thigh under the table during a grueling 4-hour board meeting. The thrill of the forbidden was like a drug, making the long hours bearable. However, the secret relationship was already fraying. Seo Yoon was in the archives looking for old land deeds when she overheard voices from the next aisle. "The chairman is furious," a male voice whispered. It was the vice chairman, Jin-Hyuk's uncle. He heard about the incident in the elevator. He thinks Jin-Hyuk is losing his focus. He's moving up the engagement with the Han Sol heiress. "The heiress?" a woman replied. It was GA. "But Jin-Hyuk hates her." "It doesn't matter. The merger with Flora depends on the Han Sol group's backing. If Jin-Hyuk doesn't marry her, the board will vote him out by the end of the month. And that little assistant? I've already contacted the immigration office. We found a discrepancy in her father's old business visas. One phone call and she's deported." Seo Yoon's blood ran cold. She backed away, her heart hammering against her ribs. "They aren't just trying to fire me, they're trying to erase me." That evening, the Mirai group held a pre-merger dinner at a luxury hotel. It was a sea of black ties and diamond necklaces. Seo Yoon wore a backless emerald silk gown. She looked stunning, and she knew it. When she walked into the ballroom, she saw Jin-Hyuk's glass pause midair as he spotted her. "She looks more like a cocktail waitress than a strategist." Jin-Hyuk's grip on his glass tightened so hard his knuckles turned white. "She is the best strategist in this room, Chae-young. Don't let the dress fool you." "Is she?" Chae-young smirked. "Well, perhaps she can fetch us some champagne. The service here is so slow." Seo Yoon looked at Jin-Hyuk, pleading with her eyes for him to say something, to defend her honor, not just her brain. But Jin-Hyuk looked away. "Go ahead, Seo Yoon. Check on the Flora reps." Seo Yoon felt a physical pain in her chest. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking angrily against the marble. She retreated to the hotel's rooftop garden, needing air. The cold soul wind bit at her bare back, but the sting was nothing compared to the humiliation. "He won't choose you, you know." Seo Yoon turned. It was Min-ji Ah holding a camera phone and a glass of wine. "He's a Kong," Jia continued, walking toward the edge of the roof. They marry for power. They play with girls like you for fun. You're just a palate cleanser before the main course. You don't know anything about us, Seo-yoon snapped. Don't I? Ji-ae held up her phone. On the screen was a grainy video. It was from the office supply room 2 nights ago. It showed Jin-Hyuk pinning Seo-yoon against the shelves, his face buried in her neck. Seo-yoon's breath stopped. Jia, please. This video goes to the chairman tonight, Ji-ae whispered, her voice venomous. Unless you do exactly what I say, you're going to leak the Flora merger price to Taesan Group. You're going to sabotage Jin-Hyuk's bid. I would never betray him. Then you'll watch him lose everything because of you, Ji-ae laughed. If the board sees this, they'll use it as moral turpitude to strip him of his CEO title. He'll be a beggar. Is your little office romance worth his entire life? Seo-yoon stood in the dark garden, the weight of the world on her shoulders. She looked down at the ballroom below, where Jin-Hyuk was standing next to the heiress, looking like the king of the world. She realized then that Jin-Hyuk had been right. The walls did have eyes, and her love wasn't a sanctuary, it was a weapon being held at his throat. She walked back inside, her mind made up. She found Jin-Hyuk in the hallway, away from the crowd. We need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. He looked at her, his expression softening for a split second. Not now. Chae-young is looking for... I'm leaving, Jin-Hyuk. He froze. What? I'm resigning. Tonight. He grabbed her arm, pulling her into an alcove. Is it because of what she said? I told you, it's just politics. I have to play the part. No, it's because I can't be the reason you lose your throne, she said, tears finally stinging her eyes. Ji-ae has a video. She's going to destroy you. If I stay, you fall. If I leave, maybe you have a chance. I don't care about the throne, he hissed, his eyes wide with a rare flash of panic. Yes, you do, she whispered, reaching up to touch his cheek one last time. You're the Ice King, remember? You don't have a heart, and I need to go before I find out if that's a lie. She turned to run, but he caught her waist, pulling her back against him. He kissed her then, not a spicy, aggressive kiss, but a desperate, breaking one. It was the kiss of a man who was losing the only thing that made him feel alive. Don't go, he murmured against her lips. I have to, she breathed. She pushed him away and ran toward the elevators, the same place where it had all started. But as she stepped inside, she didn't see the board of directors. She saw Min Ji-ah standing there with a thumb hovering over the send button on her phone. Time's up, Seo-yoon, Ji-ae smirked. The elevator doors closed, and the silence following the elevator doors closing was more violent than any shout. Lee Seo-yoon didn't wait to be fired. She didn't return to her desk. She walked out of the Mirai building and vanished into the rain-slicked streets of Seoul. She turned off her phone, tossed her ID badge into the Han River, and let the cold water of the city swallow her whole. Behind her, the explosion began. At 9 a.m. the next morning, the internal servers of Mirai Group groaned under the weight of a mass email. Min Ji-ae hadn't just sent the video to the chairman, she had CC'd the entire board of directors and the PR department. The video was clear. The Ice King Jin-Hyuk losing his composure, holding an assistant with a desperation that looked like a scandal. The office was a hornet's nest. I knew it. She climbed the ladder using her body. Look at how he's holding her. It's disgusting. In the center of the storm, Kang Jin-Hyuk stood in his office staring at the empty desk where Seo-yoon usually sat. The espresso she had brewed for him yesterday was still there, cold, dark, and bitter. The doors burst open. Chairman Kang, Jin-Hyuk's grandfather, marched in, his cane striking the floor like a hammer. Behind him stood the vice chairman and a smug-looking Min Ji-ah. You fool, the chairman hissed, throwing his tablet onto the desk. You traded the Han-Seoul merger for a common girl? You've humiliated this family. It wasn't a trade, Jin-Hyuk said, his voice terrifyingly calm. It was a choice, and I'd make it again. You won't get the chance, the vice chairman sneered. The board has called an emergency meeting. You are being suspended pending a moral conduct investigation. And as for the girl, we've already sent the police to her apartment. She's being charged with corporate espionage. GA here has provided evidence that she was selling our Flora bid to Taeson. Jin-Hyuk's eyes snapped to GA. The air in the room suddenly felt like it was ionizing. You did what? Gia didn't flinch. I'm just protecting the company's CEO. She was a spy. I have the logs of her accessing the secure server at midnight. Jin-Hyuk lunged forward, grabbing the edge of the desk. She was at my penthouse at midnight. She was with me. The room went silent. The chairman's face turned a deep, dangerous purple. Then you've just confessed to your own ruin, the chairman whispered. Get out. You are no longer the CEO of Mirai. For 3 months, the name Lee Seo-yoon was a curse in Seoul. The police couldn't find her. Her father's company was seized. The media painted her as a seductress spy. Jin-Hyuk was a ghost. He lived in his penthouse, drinking himself into a stupor, surrounded by the scent of sandalwood and the ghost of a woman he had failed to protect. He had been stripped of his power, his title, and his pride, but he hadn't stopped looking. Every night he sat in his dark living room, staring at a small silver ring he had bought the night before the scandal, a ring he never got to give her. To save the company from bankruptcy after the scandal, the chairman forced a final ultimatum. Jin-Hyuk would marry Shin Chae-young, the Han-Seoul heiress, in a public televised ceremony to restore the image of the conglomerate. If he refused, the chairman would ensure Seo-yoon's father died in a prison hospital. The day of the wedding, the grand ballroom of the Shilla Hotel was a fortress of white lilies and high society vultures. Jin-Hyuk stood at the altar looking like a man heading to his execution. He wore a tuxedo that felt like a straitjacket. Chae-young stood opposite him, a triumphant smirk hidden behind her lace veil. Do you, Kang Jin-Hyuk, take... Boom! The massive oak doors at the back of the hall didn't just open. They were slammed back so hard the hinges groaned. The music died. 1,000 heads turned. Walking down the aisle was a woman who looked nothing like the disheveled assistant from the elevator. It was Seo-yoon. She was wearing a blood-red suit that hugged every curve. Her hair was cut into a sharp, lethal bob. Her eyes weren't filled with tears. They were filled with ice. Behind her walked 4 men in dark suits. They weren't bodyguards. They were the Financial Supervisory Service, FS investigators. The ceremony is over, Seo-yoon said, her voice amplified by the stunned silence of the room. It was steady, low, and terrifyingly authoritative. The chairman stood up, trembling. You! How dare you show your face here? Guards, remove this criminal! Seo-yoon didn't stop. She walked right up to the altar, stepping onto the platform until she was level with Jin-Hyuk. She didn't look at him. She looked at the chairman. I'm not a criminal, Chairman, but your bride-to-be is, Seo-yoon said, signaling the lead investigator. The investigator stepped forward, holding a pair of handcuffs. Shin Chae-young, you are under arrest for the illegal liquidation of Flora Group assets and the bribery of Mirai executives. We have the wiretap recordings provided by our undercover informant. The crowd gasped. Chae-young screamed, This is a lie. Who is this woman? Seo-yoon finally turned her head. She looked at Jin-Hyuk. For the first time in months, their eyes met. His were wide, filled with a shock so profound he couldn't speak. I told you I was a strategist, Jin-Hyuk, she whispered, her voice only for him. I just didn't tell you who I was working for. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a badge. Lee Seo-yoon, Senior Auditor, Special Task Force. You were an auditor? Jin-Hyuk rasped, his heart shattered and rebuilt in a single second. I was sent to find the rotten Mirai, she said, her expression softening for a fraction of a second before hardening again. I found it. It was your grandfather, it was your bride, and it was Min Ji-ah. She turned to the side where Ji-ah was trying to slip out of the back. Don't bother, Ji-ah. We found the original elevator footage, the one where you manually tripped the brake from the security room to trap us. You're being charged with reckless endangerment and evidence tampering. Police swarmed the room. The wedding of the century turned into a televised crime scene. In the chaos, Jin-Hyuk grabbed Seo-yoon's arm. He didn't care about the cameras. He didn't care about the FSS. You left me, he hissed, his grip tight. You let me believe you were destroyed. You let me live in hell for 3 months. I had to, she said, her eyes glistening. If they knew I was still in contact with you, they would have killed the investigation. I had to let them think they won, so they would get sloppy. I hate you, he whispered, pulling her closer until their chests touched. I know, she breathed. I'm going to make you pay for every second of those 3 months. I'm the CEO of the Liquidation Commission now, Jin-Hyuk, she said, a small dangerous smirk appearing on her lips. Technically, I'm your boss, so watch your tone. He didn't answer. He didn't care about the power reversal. He leaned down, in front of the flashing cameras and the crumbling elite of Seoul, and kissed her with a violence that spoke of 3 months of starvation. The Ice King was gone. The silent Empress had arrived, and the war for Mirai Group had only just begun. The dust of the wedding scandal hadn't even settled when the brass nameplate on the 44th floor was replaced. It no longer read Kang Jin-Hyuk. It now read Lee Seo-yoon, interim CEO and liquidation chair. The office, once a temple of cold masculinity, had changed. The air smelled of jasmine and fresh ink, not sandalwood and stress. So-yoon sat behind the massive obsidian desk. She looked at the city through the floor-to-ceiling glass. 3 months ago, she was being dragged out of this building in shame. Now every executive who had whispered about her was lining up outside her door trembling, holding reports they hoped would save their jobs. A sharp knock sounded. "Enter," she said, her voice like silk over steel. The door opened and Kang Jin-Hyuk walked in. He wasn't wearing his 3-piece suit. He wore a simple black turtleneck and dark trousers. He looked leaner, harder, and dangerously handsome. He didn't have his security detail or his wall of secretaries. He was a man stripped of his kingdom. He stopped in front of the desk he used to own. "You're late," So-yoon said, not looking up from her tablet. "Incompetent people are usually late. Are you trying to compensate for something?" A flicker of a smile touched Jin-Hyuk's lips. He recognized his own words from their first morning. "I had to sign in at the security desk. They didn't recognize me without the CEO badge." Seo-yoon finally looked up. Her heart did a traitorous somersault at the sight of him, but her face remained a mask of professional indifference. "The board has stripped you of your voting rights. The FSS is still combing through your personal accounts. Technically, you shouldn't even be in this building." "I'm here for the job opening," Jin-Hyuk said, stepping closer. He leaned his hands on the desk, invading her space just like he used to. "I heard the new CEO needs a special consultant, someone who knows where all the bodies are buried in Mirai Group." Seo-yoon leaned back, crossing her arms. "I don't hire people with moral turpitude issues, Mr. Kang. Your reputation is messy. My reputation was ruined to protect the woman who is currently sitting in my chair," he hissed, his voice dropping to that low, vibrating growl. "I think that counts as a high-level sacrifice." "It counts as a liability," she shot back. "But I'm feeling generous. I'll give you a chance." "But not as a consultant." "Then what?" "My personal assistant just quit because she couldn't handle the workload," Seo-yoon said, a predatory glint in her eyes. "You will take her place. You will fix my schedules. You will brew my tea, and you will help me dismantle the slush funds your grandfather built. If you succeed, I might recommend the FSS drop the personal charges against you." Jin-Hyuk stared at her. The power reversal was absolute. He was the king turned servant. "And if I fail?" he asked. "Then I'll ensure you're as invisible as I was when you fired me," she whispered. Jin-Hyuk didn't hesitate. He reached across the desk, grabbed the back of her chair, and pulled it forward until her knees hit his thighs. "I'll take the job," he murmured, his face inches from hers. "But my overtime rates are very spicy, CEO Lee." The next week was a psychological war zone. Seo-yoon pushed him to the limit. She made him stand in the back of meetings while she sat at the head of the table. She made him carry her bags in front of his former subordinates. She made him stay until 3 a.m. cross-referencing tax documents. She wanted to see him break, She wanted to see if the Ice King could actually humble himself for her. But Jin-Hyuk didn't break. He was a perfect assistant. He anticipated her every move. He knew her coffee preference, no sugar, double shot, before she even asked. He handled the aggressive board members with a lethal diplomacy that made her work twice as fast. The tension between them was a physical weight. One evening, they were in the archives, the same place where she had overheard the betrayal. The lights were dim. "The Han Sol liquidation is complete," Jin-Hyuk said, handing her a folder. His hand brushed hers, and the contact felt like an electric shock. Seo-yoon tried to pull away, but he caught her wrist. "How long are we going to play this game, Seo-yoon?" "It's not a game, it's a job," she said, her breath hitching. "Liar." He pulled her into the shadows of the tall filing cabinets. He pinned her hands above her head against the cold metal. "You're punishing me. You want me to feel what you felt. Well, I feel it. I feel the humiliation. I feel the powerlessness. But most of all, I feel the fact that I'm not allowed to touch you in front of them." "You shouldn't be touching me at all," she whispered, her body betraying her by leaning into his heat. "Then why is your heart beating so fast?" He pressed his body against hers, hard and demanding. He trailed his lips along her jawline. "I watched you for 3 months on a monitor during the investigation. I watched you plan my downfall. Do you have any idea how much I wanted to scream at you for being so brilliant and so cruel?" He kissed her then. Not a kiss of comfort, but a kiss of reclamation. It was hot, desperate, and filled with the friction of their new roles. Seo-yoon moaned into his mouth, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. She was the boss, but in this dark corner they were just two predators who had finally found their match. Their moment was shattered by the vibration of Jin-Hyuk's phone. He ignored it, but Seo-yoon pushed him back. "Check it," she panted. "It might be the FSS." Jin-Hyuk looked at the screen. His expression went from heat to ice in a second. "What is it?" "It's from Chae Seong-ho," Jin-Hyuk said, showing her the message. It was a photo of Seo-yoon's father in his hospital bed. Standing over him was a man with a syringe. The text read, "The audit ends tonight or the old man stops breathing. Tasan always gets what it wants." Seo-yoon felt the world tilt. "My father? I thought the FSS guards were there." "Mo." "Sung-ho owns the hospital's private security," Jin-Hyuk said, already moving toward the door. His Ice King persona was back, but this time it was focused on protection. "Wait!" Seo-yoon grabbed his arm. "If you go there, it's a trap. He wants you to assault his men so he can put you in prison for good." "I don't care," Jin-Hyuk growled. "I do." Seo-yoon's mind was racing. "We don't go with fists. We go with the one thing Seong-ho fears more than you." "What?" "The truth about Taesun's offshore accounts. I found them today. I was going to wait for the trial, but we're using them now." They arrived at the VIP wing of Seoul General. Sung-ho was sitting in the waiting room looking like he had already won. 2 massive guards stood by the door to her father's room. "CEO Lee and her manservant," Seong-ho mocked, standing up. "You're late for the negotiation." Seo-yoon walked up to him, her face calm. She didn't look like a scared daughter. She looked like a woman holding a detonator. "The negotiation is over, Sung-ho," she said, sliding a tablet across the table. "That's the live feed of your father's main bank account in the Cayman Islands. At exactly 2 a.m., the FSS is going to freeze everyone in that account. Your company will be bankrupt by sunrise." Seong-ho's smile vanished. "You wouldn't dare. You'll destroy the market." "Try me," she whispered. "Call your man in my father's room. Tell him to step away or I hit send." Sung-ho looked at Jin-Hyuk, who was standing behind Seo-yoon, his arms crossed, looking like a silent reaper. "You think he'll let you do it?" Sung-ho sneered. "Jin-Hyuk, your shares are tied to that market." Jin-Hyuk didn't blink. "I already told you, Sung-ho, I don't care about the shares. I care about her. If she wants to burn the world to protect her father, I'll be the one to hand her the matches." Sung-ho's phone rang. It was his father, the chairman of Taesun, screaming on the other end. "Get out!" Seong-ho yelled at his guards. He turned to Seo-yoon, his face red with rage. "You think you've won? You're just a girl playing a man's game." Seo-yoon stepped closer, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Actually, Seung-ho, the game is over, and you're the only one who didn't realize it. As Seung-ho and his men retreated, Seo-yoon rushed into her father's room. He was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the war that had just been fought over his bed. She collapsed into a chair, the adrenaline leaving her body in a rush. She felt a warm hand on her shoulder. You did it, Jin-Hyuk said softly. We did it, she corrected. She looked up at him. He was no longer her boss, and he was no longer just her assistant. He was her partner. Jin-Hyuk? Yeah? You're still fired as my PA. He laughed, a rare, genuine sound that filled the sterile room. Fair enough. What's my new title? Seo-yoon stood up, wrapping her arms around his neck. How about co-conspirator? He leaned down, his eyes searching hers. I think I can live with that. He kissed her, and for the first time it didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a beginning. The aftermath of the hospital showdown didn't bring peace. It brought the final, ugly truth of the Mirai group to the surface. As Seo-yoon and Jin-Hyuk walked through the lobby of the headquarters the next morning, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of a dying empire. The FSS had finished their deep dive. The verdict was in. Mirai Group was a hollow shell. Decades of the chairman's corruption had left a debt hole so deep that even selling every asset wouldn't cover it. Seo-yoon stood in the middle of the boardroom looking at the liquidation papers. Jin-Hyuk stood by the window, his back to her. It's over, Jin-Hyuk, she said softly. The recommendation is total dissolution. Mirai Group will cease to exist by the end of the month. Jin-Hyuk turned around. He didn't look angry. He looked relieved. Good. Let it burn. It was a prison for my father, and it was a weapon used against you. It doesn't deserve to survive. But the employees, Seo-yoon argued, her heart aching for the thousands of people who had nothing to do with the chairman's greed. If we dissolve everything, they lose their livelihoods. Their families depend on this. So what's your plan, CEO? Jin-Hyuk stepped closer, a challenge in his eyes. You're the strategist. Find a way to save the soul of the company without the rot. Seo-yoon spent the next 48 hours in a trance of data and law. She didn't sleep. She barely ate. Jin-Hyuk was there every second, brewing her tea, massaging her shoulders, and acting as her intellectual sounding board. The secret relationship was no longer a secret, but no one cared. The company was sinking. The gossip had lost its teeth. I found it, she whispered, at 4 a.m. on the third day. Found what? Jin-Hyuk asked, waking from a light nap on the boardroom sofa. A dormant subsidiary, Blue Sky Logistics. It was my father's original company that your grandfather absorbed 30 years ago. Because of the way the merger was written, Blue Sky still holds the patents for the green energy tech Mirai uses. If we spin it off, we can transfer the clean assets and the employees to a new entity. We leave the debt and the lawsuits with the Miri name. Jin-Hyuk sat up, his mind working fast. It's a good bank/bad bank strategy, but you'd need a massive capital injection to start the new firm. The board won't give it to you, and the banks are scared. I don't need the board, Seo-yoon said, looking at him with a weary smile. I need the man who has $500 million in a private trust his mother left him. A trust the chairman couldn't touch. Jin-Hyuk froze. You knew about that? I'm an auditor, remember. I find everything. She walked over to him, kneeling between his legs. Jin-Hyuk, this is your chance. Don't be the reaper who watched a company die. Be the founder who built something honest. Jin-Hyuk looked into her eyes. He saw the woman who had spilled coffee on him, the woman who had arrested his bride, and the woman who was currently holding his heart in her hands. On one condition, he said, his voice thick with emotion. What? We do it together, 50-50 partnership, no boss and employee nonsense, just us. The final shareholders' meeting was a war zone. The chairman, out on bail and looking frail but venomous, sat at the head of the table. Min Ji-ah was there, escorted by police for her final testimony. You're destroying my legacy, the chairman screamed as Seo-yoon presented the spin-off plan. You're stealing the company. I'm not stealing it, Chairman Seo-yoon. Seo-yoon said, her voice echoing with a power that silenced the room. I'm liberating it. You used people as chess pieces. You used your grandson as a shield. Today the game ends. She threw a document onto the table. The majority of shareholders have already signed. Jin-Hyuk's capital injection has been approved. As of this moment, Mirai Group is in bankruptcy. Long live Blue Sky Global. The chairman collapsed into his chair, his face gray. Minjia let out a sob as the officers led her away. She looked at Seo-yoon, hoping for a shred of pity. Seo-yoon gave her none. You chose the wrong side, Jia, was all she said. 1 month later, the new office was smaller, located in a trendy district of Seoul, with lots of light and open spaces. There were no private elevators, no obsidian desks. Seo-yoon was in her office reviewing the first quarterly projections for Blue Sky Global. She heard a familiar click of expensive shoes. Jin-Hyuk walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. I brought your Americano, he said, setting it down carefully. No spills. Seo-yoon looked at him. He looked younger. The Ice King mask had been replaced by the face of a man who finally knew who he was. Thank you, Mr. Partner, she smiled. He walked around the desk, pulling her up and into his arms. He didn't care that the glass walls were clear and the employees could see. I was thinking, he murmured, his nose brushing against hers. Since we're partners now, we need to discuss our merger strategy. Oh, and what's the first step? A vacation? Somewhere with no elevators, no suits, and definitely no coffee. Seo-yoon laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. I think I can approve that. He kissed her, a long, deep, and peaceful kiss that tasted of freedom and the future. As they stood there, framed by the Seoul skyline, a notification popped up on Seo-yoon's phone. A new hire had just started in the logistics department. The message read, New hire spilled water on the manager's laptop. Should we fire her? Seo-yoon looked at the screen, then at Jin-Hyuk. What should we do, Sad? He asked, glancing at the phone. Seo-yoon smiled, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Tell the manager to buy a waterproof laptop, and tell the new hire to be careful. You never know who you're bumping into. Jin-Hyuk pulled her closer, his eyes filled with a heat that promised a lifetime of spicy complications. Whatever the boss says, he whispered. We're partners, Jin-Hyuk. Right, he smiled, leaning down for one last kiss. Whatever my partner says. This